Hey y'all, this is Brian and Jasper Hamill was my guest on episode number 24 of Origin. And from the moment that we spoke for the first time, I knew it was going to be a great podcast. We hit it off immediately. He is a self-proclaimed enjoyer of rebels, weirdos, and freethinkers. He is also a tech and science editor for The Sun, raised in London. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Ended kind of abruptly because he has kids and a wife who expects him to help raise them. But other than that, I hope he agrees to come on again and have another conversation with me. I really enjoyed it. But here he is, Jasper Hamill.
Thank you, Jasper. I really appreciate you joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm great, actually. I'm coming from a very hot London. We're having a very rare heat wave, so it's very sweaty here.
Oh man, I heard about it. That's horrible.
Well, it's lovely, to be honest. The thing about us British people, we moan whether it's cold, we moan whether it's hot. We just moan, so we're moaning about it being hot.
You're the world's best moaners, huh?
We are. The whinging. The Australians call us whinging poms, and I always think that's quite accurate. we like a good grumble.
I love it. Oh, that's so fantastic. 33 degrees, somebody said on Twitter the other day. And as an American, I listened to 33 degrees. I'm like, oh, that sounds wonderful. But actually, that's really hot, right?
Yeah, really hot for us. Yeah, us pasty Brits.
I lived up in Washington for a little while, and there is no air conditioning up there. And I imagine, you're in London too, right?
Yeah, in the middle of London, and there's no air conditioning here. Certainly not on the tube, which is a nightmare.
On the tube? So you just stay underground the entire time?
No, you try to spend as little time underground. The tube is one of the great miseries of London existence. So very fantastically creative place, London. It's full of great ideas, but you've got to endure a lot to get to the great ideas, if you know what I mean. They make you suffer for it, and part of that is getting the tube.
What's a great idea for you in London?
A great idea for me in London, well, something I've been very keen on. It's very rare, I think, that the government ever does anything to help creativity. But actually in London, we're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. We've got this, we're desperately trying to encourage startups, technology startups. And one of the great ideas the government has come up with is if you go to them with a really good idea, they'll give you 50% of the funding straight off the bat. And then if you can find an entrepreneur or a venture capitalist to help you get the rest of the money, your idea is going to happen. And so it just gives that little boost to the people looking to put venture capital in, because they know that the government's backed them. And I've met some fantastic people with some fantastic ideas, really young kids who wouldn't have been able to get their ideas off the ground simply because the government has put this great scheme together. And it's
fantastic.
Rare.
Can you give me some examples of people who have actually been able to get some great ideas off the ground? Like,
yeah, I can. I forget these people's name, I have to say. But one of the big industries these days in the world is esports, and you wouldn't believe it, but
yes, esports
billions.
is a big thing. But didn't ESPN just decide to do away with it, or that was getting big and then it crashed back down to nothing?
I think it's still pretty big. One of the big finals recently had an audience, a global audience, bigger than the Super Bowl.
Wow!
And I met this kid the other day, and he was an investment banker, and he just decided to give up investment banking, and he went for lunch with the guy, and because he had this government backing, the guy just wrote him a £50,000 check at the dinner table and handed it to him. And he's basically working with a computer games developer called the developers of a game called FIFA, and he's building this competitive league that you could be a part of, and you can all and a prize winning. And I think it's just a very, very simple idea, but I think people are going to get really behind it.
Well, I mean, if you're from South Korea, you're definitely behind games like StarCraft and stuff like that. They love their online competition. They love their games. They love
do.
This.
They do. What I find fascinating about this, I've always wanted to meet the why in here in Britain, we've got a phrase, a WAG, a wife and girlfriend, which is the wags of footballers and things like that. And I've often wondered if esports players have glamorous girlfriends as well.
I don't know. I'm guessing you're saying you're wondering if they do.
Yeah,
I
I'm
want
wondering if they do.
I want you to furnish that answer now.
I'm looking into it, man. That's my next story.
There you go.
And there's lots of great ideas. Fusion power is a big thing that's going on in Britain. And actually, fusion power, I guess, in terms of creativity, if forces, we need to basically start again. You know, the fusion power is the idea that we can create a little star, more or less, that creates limitless clean energy.
Yeah.
And it isn't radioactive. And it won't kill the planet, and it will power the planet, and everyone's racing. And I think London, there's a few people in London that apparently claim to be edging ahead, and it's a very difficult thing. You've got to keep this little mini star balanced in a magnetic field and all the rest of it.
That's the thing. I wrote a story just recently where I'm actually writing a novel where I had the power of my space station be fusion. I'm like, how does that work? And I had to look into containment. Containment is where that falls apart. You have to contain the power somehow, and that's where we just don't have it. It's where the technology just kind of evaporates.
And it requires fresh thinking and creativity. People often don't associate science and with creativity, but of course, you need to break the mold in your thinking. And I think creativity depends on breaking the mold. And I think it depends on a certain aspect of rebellion. And you need to see the established order, and you need to go another way. And often you endure ridicule and criticism along the way, and you take an enormous risk. And you alienate your friends, your competitors, your wife, everyone.
Your health, in some cases. I mean,
and your health, yeah. And then you get to where you're going, and I think that's one of the most important things. I've been thinking about creativity and rebellion, and I think rebellion. We're very good at rebellion in Britain, I think, because we've always had the posh. We've always been dedicated. We've always been dominated by the wealthy aristocracy. So we've always kicked against them, and actually, it's led to tremendous creativity. And I think rebellion and creativity are intimately linked. And how do you encourage people to be more rebellious? When your teachers don't want you to be rebellious, your boss doesn't want you to be rebellious, yet being rebellious so clearly works. And
no, that's such a fascinating idea too, because if you really think about it, Americans like to think we're Americans, but at one time we were British, and we started this grand experiment 240 years ago where democracy kicked off the way it is today as British citizens, and back as British citizens, democracy became what it is today, and that spawned what it is in its glory. But I do want to go back to the fusion, because I'm so interested in that, because that is, again, technology that I'm kind of playing with right now in my prose. What is happening with that?
Well, nobody seems able to master fusion, I'm afraid, and so we're trying to get the fusion reaction going on a scale that's manageable, and keep it contained in this magnetic field. And it's kind of quite hush hush, because there's obviously big money riding on this. Whoever cracks the secret of fusion is going to, will they become incredibly rich? I would imagine they would do, unless, of course, they were generous and gave this technology for the benefit of humanity, like, say, the World Wide Web, another great British invention, which was given away for free. And that's why the internet is as free as it is. So I guess whoever discovers fusion, if they could do the right thing and give it to humanity, but they probably won't, I'm afraid. So we're thinking 10, 20 years is going to be the moment where we'll get a sort of a workable reactor. And then from that, I think it could save human civilization. There's no exaggeration, so it could save human civilization. Also, the great thing about fusion, as far as I understand, it doesn't leave behind stuff that you can then use to make a weapon. So it's purely
that's interesting and important too. I just really find it fascinating. You say magnetism, and leaving behind a waste. I wonder if the containment field itself would be the waste. And there's got to be something. I mean, it's just so uncontrollable. Magnetism, that's so fascinating. That would be what would be containing it, keeping it balanced. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. As far as I understand, I think the waste products of fusion are they not water? Is it not water? I think it's incredibly clean. As far as I understand, the clean fusion produces nothing but water, which would be an astonishing byproduct. I mean, you might not want to drink it,
Yeah.
But compared to the the rubbish that gets left behind from fission, nuclear fission, it's clearly much better. So I get this seems to me to be the most important technology that humans can be developing at the moment.
I hear that, and that's definitely interesting. I've also heard that fission waste could potentially be used as a power source eventually also, where I think some people are compressing it down into crystals, and those crystals can be used indefinitely, like perpetual batteries, basically.
Really? I wasn't aware of that. So, mate, how does that work? That's incredible.
Well, I could make it up, but no,
Yeah.
it kind of works like if you understand the geological creation of diamonds, it kind of works like that, where they compress the material down until it can't be compressed anymore, and it crystallizes, and there's some kind of reaction that occurs within that crystal, and that reaction it can be harnessed and they can use it. I mean, that's prosy, but there's obviously some kind of chemical chain that happens, and they can harness it. You can go, if you use Reddit, futurology is a great subreddit for that kind of stuff. There tons of articles always pop up, and that was one of them. I glanced at it, and that's the information I gleaned.
Gosh, how interesting. I guess there's a lot of money riding on these things, so let's
Right.
hope I think there's a lot riding on it. There's an environmental issue. We clearly need to wean ourselves on fossil fuels.
No,
and
it's truly amazing. I mean, what we've been doing this 100 years, 120, 130 years, and we've poisoned our planet so horribly. And our society is so wonderful, and we want to keep it going, obviously, because we've done so much with it. But at the same time, how much more can we do? We're eating our boat. We can't live in the water. We can't do anything else, and our boat is slowly shrinking.
Yeah, I don't. It's true. You're absolutely right. I don't think it's beyond human ingenuity to solve problems. You've heard of the concept of geoengineering, which is that you can somehow fix the planet, which is a very controversial idea. That because environmentalists believe that you've ruined the planet, that's it. It's too late. You should just stop ruining the planet, and that's the most important thing. Stop polluting. Stop wasting resources. But what geoengineers seem to be saying is that you can keep on wasting your resources. You can keep on burning fossil fuels, because at some point we'll be clever enough to think of a way of solving it. I met this guy once, a scientist in Edinburgh, a very credible, in Edinburgh University, which was one of our top universities, and he had been working on this idea for years, which was basically to send tiny little automated boats sailing around the ocean, and they would be spraying something into the oceans to make them more reflective. Big patches of the oceans, which would then reflect. I think that's what he was doing, and then that would somehow cool the planet down. I have to actually double check if that's exactly how I remember. But it was a crazy idea, but it might just work, I guess.
One of the more sorrier things about my brain is that I cannot retain names, unfortunately. Nor can I actually recall who this podcast was, or what which one of the podcasts I was listening to gave me this information. But a scientist or some kind of thinker said that one of the reasons that we shouldn't worry about global warming is that eventually we will have the technology necessary to fix what we're doing. We develop the technology to propel ourselves at 120 miles an hour, and eventually we'll invent the technology necessary to where we don't actually have to control those vehicles ourselves any longer, and we're able to power this and do that. Maybe we'll invent the technology to fix the planet like we did our hearts and our lungs and our blah blah blah. So maybe.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I do live in hope, but the problem is, I guess, when you're dealing with a system as complex as planet Earth, you put one other thing in the system, you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example. Like myxomatosis, like the disease, the virus myxomatosis that was introduced to kill the rabbits in Australia. I mean, that spread across the world. It's not a pretty story, and I don't know if you've ever seen a rabbit with myxomatosis. I've seen a British rabbit. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, and it's killing these poor innocent rabbits over in Britain or other countries. What it was meant to do was kill the invasive rabbits that were accidentally brought to Australia and are running roughshod across the native species. And I worry that maybe we will manage to cool the planet, but then you think, well, what if we cool it too much? We can't grow anything. or what if it turns out that 20 years down the line, the way we've done it actually causes some brand new form of cancer, and suddenly we've got a public health crisis.
Yeah.
I always just think there's feedbacks that we never quite understand.
That's very true. And we are products of this planet too. So, I mean, honestly, we are the reason, or the planet itself is the reason that it's heating up. And it does go through secular, right? I mean, it heats up and cools down all the time. I mean,
yeah,
the universe itself is amazing. I mean, we don't know what's out there. We don't even know why the solar system exists the way the solar system exists.
No, that blows my mind, actually. I have to say.
Man.
It does. I mean, I've never been a religious man, but I have to say, religious people have as many answers as the scientists about why we're here. We're both absolutely stumped.
Right? It really does. It's crazy. If you sit there and think about how much we actually know about anything, the answer is nothing. Gravity's a theory, right? Everything is just kind of like a theory, or the law of gravity, actually. I guess we know that we're stuck here because of centrifugal force or whatnot, but everything is just a theory.
Yes, it's true. And I find myself fascinated by some of the more bizarre theories about the way the world is. I've become a bit of a scholar of conspiracy theories.
Why not?
The one I've particularly loved is this theory that the Earth is flat, and that
oh my God, I love it so much. I don't know if you're like, I'm just going to interrupt you right now, and I'm going to throw this out there because if I hurt your feelings, I'm sorry, but I think everybody who thinks that the world is flat, like they think this, is just an absolute troll who's just making fun of everybody else. But I love it. I love them so much. I'm so happy that they're out there, and I'm so happy that they're doing what they're doing. But with that said, please go ahead.
Yes, it's a truly bizarre theory. And I was watching this video the other day, and actually the guy who delivered it was a very credible speaker. And I mean, I'd not heard of him, but the way he delivered his argument was really quite compelling. And he was suggesting that that NASA, everything NASA had done is a lie, from the moon landing to the Hubble telescope. That he said, if that Hubble telescope is real, why don't they point it at Earth and show us? And it's just painting.
And just waste the billions and billions of dollars that it took to point it the way that it's pointing right now.
Yeah, and it was astonishing, and it was incredibly well. Well, no, it wasn't incredibly well backed up, but clearly
it was complete nonsense based on no information whatsoever, and came out of that dude's brain. But it was brilliantly thought and articulated anyway.
It was, and I guess that's one of the great things about, well, one of the bad and good things about the internet is that you can get out information that people don't want you to get out there on the internet, but you can also put stuff that's utter nonsense, and then because there's so much of it, you can then reference stuff that's gone before, and suddenly you've got a sort of a canon that you can draw on. It's actually a canon of nonsense, and I think that's quite fascinating.
Do you ever find yourself thinking, find yourself sitting there wondering how you could make it real? How could I make this real? How could I make the science work? Okay, so the Antarctic, or the South Pole, is it the Antarctic?
Yeah.
That surrounds the Earth, right? And a giant ridge. That's why we can't cross the barrier to find the edge of the planet or something along those lines.
Yeah. That is what they say. Yeah, I read that as well.
So I've actually delved a little deep into this, and I like to actually think about how I could make this real. As a writer, I like to make the Earth flat. That's fantastic. I want a big disc thing. That'd be a nice playground to put my characters in.
It is. It's a beautiful image. What I would be often wonder is if we are being lied to the extent that some people think. I mean, that is an incredible lie. That the world is flat. Why would we be lied to? Why? What could NASA have to gain from lying to the whole world about whether the Earth is flat or not? I never understood it. But some people believe it.
I mean, let's come up with the why. That would be an interesting. Or is that a waste of time completely? Why would NASA and the world lie to us about this?
Why would they lie to us about it?
Has anybody come up with that? I mean, why are we being lied to? Is it just generally a conspiracy?
It is. There's never an answer, is there? Why we're being lied to? I don't know. Maybe they've got really lovely houses just outside the Antarctic. They don't want us to realise.
They don't want to share with us.
No, they don't want to share with us, and they've got us trapped in this. I don't know. Presumably, it's something to do with wealth, and it would have to be with maintaining wealth and power over us. But yeah,
we're an experiment.
I don't know about the flat Earth. That is something.
That's where the lizard men live, or something like that. No, I love
Yeah.
that one. Honestly, I really do. I love the flat Earth people. I think they're amazing. And if they're not trolls, I feel so bad for them because that's the dumbest way to live your life. But I want them to be trolls. I want them to say, you know what? I don't know what the solar system is, so the Earth might as well be flat. I don't know what the universe is, so the Earth might as well be flat. I mean, it makes no sense otherwise. Nothing
No,
else makes any more sense.
but I guess people said the same thing about the people who declared that the Earth wasn't flat, and the people and Galileo and Copernicus who looked out into the universe and said that the universe doesn't actually center around Earth, and they were considered mad. So maybe we're the mad ones, and actually will be proven right eventually.
You know, honestly, I just had a thought though. I did remember that there is a religious overtone to it all. You know,
Okay.
the whole God and Jesus thing. There is like a biblical thing that comes along with the flat Earth thing. That I
Okay,
think a
what's
lot of
that?
these people,
What's that?
like I think it goes back to the Renaissance. You know, they didn't actually believe the Earth was round, flat. They always knew it was round because I mean they'd proved it in the Grecian times. I mean the classical era. They had done the math. I mean they weren't dumb people. They had planted the stick in the ground and
Mm-hmm.
they were able to do whatever word I'm looking for here. But they decided to ignore that because it didn't match up to what the Bible said, or they didn't match up to what this person or that person said. And this kind of flat Earth parallel hypothesis kind of matches along with that, where they want to get rid of the dinosaurs, they want to get rid of this, that, and the other thing. They want to make it that the Earth is only 3,000 years. What is the thing with the
Yeah, I
Google
think
scholar?
3,000 years old creationists. Yeah.
Yeah, the creationists. They want to make that more of a viable hypothesis, and if they make the Earth flat, then there's a God up in the sky controlling the sun, making it shine where he wants.
I think there's something very human about that endeavor.
Yeah.
That you're trying to shape your interpretation of the world to fit your theory about how the world should be. And it's like the people, the creationists who see dinosaurs and they say they're sent to test our faith. God put them there, so we would have to truly keep the faith to believe that the Earth is only 6,000 years old or whatever, which is a remarkable interpretation. For that to be your first thought is actually really very human. It's very creative.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I never thought about it as being human.
It's bananas, but it's
I mean, honestly, we're a banana species. I mean, it's a great pun to use, being that we came from monkeys.
Yeah, I read once. I read a book of anthropology, a famous book of anthropology called something like The Golden Fleece or something like that. And he was talking about how it's this human urge to project consciousness on something else. So we see each other, we understand that each other has feelings, and we each have a mind. And we look for that mind in the natural world. So we would see if the sun comes up and goes down every day. We just imagine we imagined it was a bit like us. When it shines bright, it's angry. When it's cold, it's sad. We just projected our feelings on the world. Was one of his theories, which I thought was really interesting and kind of quite
That's
incredible.
fascinating, because we did apply feelings to things like that. We gave them deities. We put deities in the sun. We put them into the moon. We put them into lightning bolts and weather patterns and this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, we had to explain it somehow. And
Yeah,
the thing about the gods that were governing them, they were very human. They always had a
fallible.
name.
They took effigies. I mean, they walked among us. They took avatars and they became snakes and they became this and the other thing, and they impacted how we lived our lives.
And they were very horny, particularly the Greek ones.
Yes.
The Greek ones were terrible. There was you wouldn't want to go out with a Greek god because it would end in divorce, because they were always coming down in the form of a shower of coins or something, and to have their way with one of us mere mortals, or all other unspeakable stories that I'm sure I would spare your listeners, but I recommend you look them up because they had some really dirty minds, the Greeks.
Absolutely. I mean, going back a little bit too, even the New Age thinkers kind of make rational arguments for the dinosaurs as well, saying that they were placed there for specifically becoming oil for us, the modern age, to use to further our technologies.
Good goodness me, that is an interesting theory.
Right? I just read that not too long ago, and it just kind of made me think for a second. I was like, wow, that's really neat.
It really would be neat, yeah. Because maybe if you speak to, I spoke to a religious computer programmer once. So in fact, my uncle is a computer programmer of some repute, and he's very religious. And when you suggest to him that life could have evolved randomly, that the way DNA works could have just happened, he said, well, I've tried to write computer programs all my life. Something that complex always goes wrong. Trying to do anything that it's so unlikely, he says, that could have been random, that clearly there has to be the hand of some kind of creator. And I couldn't really argue with that. It does seem mad that that's just come from nowhere, but
I can't make my mind work. How old is the Earth? It's like 300 million years old or something along those lines.
I think it's a few billion years old. Yeah.
The Earth or the universe?
I think the Earth. Yeah. How old? I'm not sure. Yeah, a few billions. What do you think? 300 million. It's 4.5 billion years ago. So quite a long time.
The Earth was formed, and then life was 300 something.
Yeah, and we are incredibly recent.
300,000.
Yeah,
I recently discovered that number's like only 9 figures long. Yes. And I can't wrap my mind around that, honestly, that it's only that much time. That we formed a separate branch of evolution from whatever came before us, that missing link, or not a missing link, whatever happened that we separated from. I just can't make that happen in my head. I can't imagine us becoming from whatever it was.
So, no, I think that blows your mind. And the whole course of human civilization has actually only been really the stuff we understand a few thousand years, 4,000 years, maybe more than that. But as we recognize it, that's it
depends on what you think about Egypt, honestly. I mean, you could put 10,000 years there for the pyramids, but I think something happened there that really catapulted us beyond whatever was happened before, caves and saber-toothed tigers.
Yeah, and I wonder what it was. I always think, when did... I guess it probably wasn't one eureka moment. It was probably several. But Egypt blows my mind. Like, what were they up to? What a mad society, and what a fascinating society. But it worked for them. I mean, the level of creativity you saw from that civilization was astonishing. But why? Why are the gods with the animal heads? Where did they come from?
You asked the question, and I think about the old map where they show the migratory patterns of Homo sapiens coming out of Egypt, Africa, and they came up through the crescent, through Egypt and through the Middle East, going through, Greece and separating to Asia and Europe. They went through that area, every single one of them, that traveled. Maybe the cream of the crop stopped there or something. Every single one of them stopped and gave a little bit of information.
Of course, I didn't think of that. Yeah, of course they must have done. And then got on to colonize, to populate the rest of the world. Of course. So do you think that's why it's this cradle of civilization?
Yeah, it's fascinating to think that's where information came from, and then I love it. I mean, think where we came from.
Yeah, I went to the British Museum the other day, the good old British Museum.
Oh God, I want to go to London so bad. That's such a great museum, I bet.
It's
have you
fantastic.
been to New York? Have you compared that one to our National History Museum?
Yes, I think have I been to the Natural History Museum in New York? I don't think I have,
No.
I've been to New York a few times. I went when I was a bit artier, so I went to all the art galleries. I've had several incarnations. As I used to write about the arts a bit more, so I went in my arty phase. So no, I must come back. I love New York; it's a fantastic city. The British Museum, we basically nicked. Sorry, that's a British phrase. We stole everything from around the world. We didn't trust people to look after their own artifacts, so we took them back to London. Because the thing is, the beginning of archaeology, which was a European discipline, the rest of the world wasn't actually looking for these things. That they didn't go into the desert and dig to find ancient treasures, unless they were grave robbers or something like this. But when the European colonizers went out into the world, obviously, I'm not going to speak out in favor of the brutality of colonization and empire, but not along with the armies, we took scientists. When Napoleon went to Egypt, not Napoleon, Napoleon, the French Napoleon went to Egypt. He brought a lot of scientists, a lot of artists, and they produced the best ever portrait of ancient Egyptian society that had ever been made. So that European curiosity is why we've got something like the British Museum. There's a story, I forget this guy's name, but there was a lost city in India, and obviously England has a long history with India, and it had a mysterious sign that was written in 3 languages, carved into the rock face. I forget what this city is called, but nobody ever bothered to try and translate it. They just saw it and didn't think anymore. But when this English guy arrived, I thought, well, what does that say? And so he was a soldier, and he dedicated himself to understanding it. And eventually he cracked the mystery and began to translate this ancient language. And the people had thought to look, and that curiosity was a very European thing, and something I think is a good, something we should be proud of as Europeans. You know, we shouldn't always feel, in the West, I mean, I count America as kind of Europe squared. You're like the capital of Europe, I think. I think.
Well, it's interesting. If you go back to that the India story, that city, that area was a long lost civilization, right? I mean, they just discovered this new place that didn't know existed. That's eons old.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knew it existed. They just hadn't bothered to work out why.
And they forgot about it. I mean, long lost completely, older than Greece.
It was very old. Yeah, I forget the language, and he basically and from this soldier's work, and you wouldn't assume soldiers go trying to crack ancient mysteries, but that's the kind of the weird contradiction at the heart of British Empire.
It's so fascinating, and it is a horrible colonialization. Was a horrible thing for a good many millions of people, but at the same time, so much culture and history was saved because of it that never would have been saved. I mean, how do you balance it, kind of, right? All these souls, but we saved some stuff that never would have been saved otherwise.
Yeah, so it's actually a very, very complex issue, right? And I don't think we ever get a straight answer now. I think we're very bound up at the moment. Obviously, we've correctly decided that it's wrong to be racist and it's wrong to treat other groups of people differently based upon the colour of their skin, their culture, and these are fantastic and very, very important developments. But at the same time, it's made us unable to really decode what was right and what was wrong about colonization. It's made us unable to see that there could have possibly been anything good about it. And also, I think because we just automatically assume it's bad, we don't know how bad it was. We just know it was bad. But how bad was it and how good was it? I actually don't think the Europeans really have a handle on that question. It's a cultural cringe we still have about it. And I think it'd be important for the future if we all kind of had a bit better understanding of the period of colonization.
And maybe we'll frown on this next statement, but 2 white guys talking about this, maybe. But we're all human, right? It's our heritage.
Yeah. That I have to say, that always annoys me. When I grew up, it was kind of where it was unacceptable to dismiss people's opinions based upon the color of their skin, and I still believe it's unacceptable. But we've kind of, it's coming back. And if you're a white man, you've got to just shut up. I don't actually believe that. I think we all have a right to kind of discuss these issues openly, and I think we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that freedom of inquiry. And but yeah, God, that's probably a controversial point, isn't it? But
unfortunately, because that guy, the soldier, in the turn of the 20th century, was interested in a place that people were walking by, and as a human being, I want to know more about that place. In the turn of the 20th century, there was a guy who was a con artist. He was a millionaire who was digging in Turkey, and he uncovered the city of Troy, or supposedly, who knows actually, but he uncovered a place that could potentially be the place where they fought the Trojan Wars. I mean, I'm interested in that as a human being. I want to know more. He stole a bunch of artifacts. He's kind of a dirtbag about it, but at the same time, if he hadn't have been a dirtbag, he wouldn't have uncovered that history. We've been trotted on for who knows how long.
I guess that sometimes the uglier sides of humanity have unexpected consequences. It's violence and competition are kind of go hand in hand. If you look at ancient Europe, which was very small competing units, very small countries that were always fighting, very creative. You look at ancient Greece, lots of small cities. always fighting, very creative. You look at Silicon Valley, lots of individual companies
God,
competing.
what a great juxtaposition. What a really great way to look at it. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just couldn't get over the poetry there. That's really beautiful.
Oh, that's kind. Yeah, it's just and these it's these small units competing seem to have seem to have a stimulating effect on creativity. And you know, we've always been at war in Europe. We're no longer anymore. But I don't think you could call this a European golden age. It's not a European golden age. The European golden age is kind of gone. And actually, we were at our most creative when we were at each other's throats. And
Trying to beat each other to death.
Trying to beat each other to death. So it probably wasn't very pleasant to live. But my goodness, that's where we got the Enlightenment, it's where we got the scientific revolution. It's also where we got some really shocking and awful weapons. And I see a bit of that in America, in Silicon Valley, yeah, which is you know, private companies fighting economically for domination. And I'd actually find myself then comparing that to, say, a more monolithic culture like China. And China is obviously a huge booming economy, but they are desperate to encourage creativity and original thinking. But actually, it's quite difficult in a monolithic society, and especially not a very free society, where I think it's more difficult to stimulate creativity. There's something about competition and small units and kind of freedom that makes creativity possible, I think.
It's hard in today's age because of the fake news and all that good stuff. What you read on the internet, was it true or is it hyped? But I read recently that China's winning the tech war. Do you disagree with that?
I'd say probably it's winning the tech production war.
Production.
Yeah, I don't think we can't.
Not innovation.
Not necessarily innovation. I don't think it is winning the innovative war yet. I'm sure it's not beyond China. Clearly, they can make stuff cheaper. You know, but when they build an Apple product, you know, that Apple product was dreamed up in Silicon Valley by people whose thinking can be traced back to the kind of LSD culture of the 1960s, which really, you know, you can't actually simulate something like that. You can't have a government initiative that decides, oh, we're going to expand our mind by taking hallucinogenic drugs. We're going to have a revolution of the mind, and then we're going to get jobs 10 years later. And then that hippy dippy stuff is going to feed into our the way we do things, which is exactly how Steve Jobs took inspiration. You know, the late great Steve Jobs said that taking LSD was one of the great moments of his life. You can't actually simulate that. The Chinese government can't suddenly sit down and say, right, we want to be creative. You know, it's a difficult thing, and there was something very, very special in a number of very, very special things that happened throughout Western history, Western culture, that I think led to this creativity. And I think China will find it hard to compete with, particularly with Silicon Valley, and particularly as Silicon Valley is going to pay its best people to leave and come and work for them. You know, the immigrant. If you speak to Silicon Valley, they want very lax immigration laws because they want to bring in the best. They basically want to suck the cleverest people in the world and put them all in one place in Silicon Valley. And I think that's what's going to happen. And it is already happening. And I'm not convinced that anyone can beat Silicon Valley in technology at the moment, to be honest.
That's interesting.
Engineers?
Do you think only engineers and mathematicians?
What, in Silicon Valley?
Yeah. Coders
I think there's more to it. I think there's an element of art to this and creativity, because of course, you know, you look at an Apple product, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You know,
right.
I've never said that about Dell, a Dell PC. You never think, oh, well, that's lovely, or you never even look at a Samsung phone and think, wow, that's really beautiful. But you look at the iPhone, the iPad, everything that Apple has ever made is beautiful. And it's because they have that connection to the arts. And actually, you can trace back their thinking to the Beatles. It's there's so much feeding into that creative. And obviously, you've got the coders and you've got the mathematicians and you've got the brains. But I think there's kind of there's a cross-pollination there. And it comes back to this freedom that we have in the West. And these kind of great cultural flourishings that we had in the 20th century and beforehand, of course. And I don't. So I think Silicon Valley is very. I think America is very special, and I think Silicon Valley in particular is really special. And I find it very difficult to think that anyone would ever be able to mimic or compete with that, because it's so special and so free. That yeah, I can't see China catching up anytime soon. Maybe I'm wrong. Probably I'll be proven
Just
wrong.
in terms of the creativity. And while you were speaking, I was thinking about you. It's hard to foster creativity when you're afraid. They have a really great artist, and they did a documentary. My wife dragged me to it. She dragged me to it. I was so, dragging my feet. I did not want to see it. And I sat there and I was like mesmerized the whole time. I loved it. It was a really beautiful piece of film, and it just made me think this person was stuck, behind a fence, and he couldn't create. But he's an artist in China. It's like, that seems so depressing to me.
It's very hard to create when you're scared. I just finished reading about Stalin in Russia. Stalin. I mean, Stalin was a bad man, a horrifically bad man. I forget, the death toll is tens and tens and tens of millions, because but he was very strict in the way he governed science. He governed everything basically. Like every play that was published that was put on in Russia had to be signed off by him. Every book, he was, like the worst boss you could imagine, basically, like a micromanager, like you couldn't believe. And he had a certain belief about the way he thought science should be. And there was this theory he backed. I think it was the theory of hereditary, that the way traits are passed down through the generations. And the problem is, the person who he backed, who was called Lysenko, his theories were absolutely wrong. They were absolutely wrong. It flew in the face of Darwinian evolution. It rejected natural selection. But it was utterly wrong, and Stalin believed in it, so he put all the money, and anybody that disagreed with him, even though this theory was wrong, was killed. I gather, and I take this directly from Wikipedia, 3,000 biologists were sent to prison, killed, or executed as part of this campaign by this man Lysenko to silence his critics. Could you imagine trying to come up with a new idea in an environment like that, where if you have the wrong idea, you're going to get killed?
And you know what it did at the end of Stalin's life? His whole draconian attitude ended up killing him too, because people were afraid to help him as he's dying of a stroke in his piss, stained pajamas, half laying off his couch. I mean, they were afraid to touch him. They were afraid to help him. They were afraid to do anything for that poor guy. And he died painfully. He died, half paralyzed, unable to talk. Just,
yes,
that's
absolutely true. That's absolutely true. There is some suggestion that they let him die. There is some suggestion that his closest comrades let him die, but of course we'll never know. They might be terrified. The doctors were scared to treat him because you get something wrong, you're going to get killed.
I mean, no decision's better than a decision. I mean, that's what I read. The biography said that they just stood around because they were afraid that the person next to him was going to rat them out. Oh, would that person let you die? I mean, they didn't know who the next person was going to be in charge. Are they going to be as bad as this guy? I mean, that's just a horrible environment. I mean, we complain. We call ourselves Nazis. We call this person Hitler. We call that person horrible. But man, our society is so beautifully free.
I sincerely think that the West is the best society we've ever had. Obviously, it's not perfect, but the fact that I can go out into the street and basically shout whatever I want, and unless someone sues me, I'm not going to end up in jail unless I'm inciting someone to violence. Here in Britain, we're not allowed to incite people to violence, which seems to me to be a fair speech. But in America, I mean, I gather we have very strict laws in England governing what we could say about, say, trials, for instance, court cases and things like that. And it's very easy to be sued in Britain. But I understand the freedom of speech laws in America are really inspiring and amazing, and it's guaranteed in your constitution. And I think that's a beautiful and noble thing. It's something that we should all be very proud of.
I mean, you don't want to be somebody who signed a contract and then released secret documents like Chelsea Manning, because unfortunately they're going to send you to prison and you're going to be in pain for a number of years and potentially forever. He's really lucky, or she's really lucky that she got out, even though, potentially people are whispering she didn't really do anything wrong. But man, I'm really feel bad.
I don't think you want to mess with the military. That's probably like, you know, I think freedom can go too far, but if you are leaking national secrets, then I suspect probably with some justification, the military will go after you and it won't be very pretty. But, you know, if that was Stalin, like, Chelsea Manning would have been killed.
Yeah.
And the whole of
Chelsea
Chelsea
Manning, and nobody would even know. I mean, yeah, that wouldn't even happen. I wouldn't be following her on Twitter, nor would I be calling that person a her to begin with. I mean, and that freedom would not exist.
No, Chelsea would be dead, and Chelsea's family would be killed as well, and everyone that was associated with Chelsea.
Exactly. But as far as freedom of speech goes, I mean, the Westboro Baptist Church would not be, you know, putting up protests for soldiers' funerals, calling them, you know, murderers and saying that we're all condemned to go to hell, or you know, oh man, there's some horrible freedom of speeches, but at the same time you say, well, you guys are jerks, but stop.
It's that classic phrase, isn't it? I disagree with your point, but I'll die so you're allowed to make it. That's I can't remember
wish you would reconsider, and this is really God, I want to turn the other cheek. Oh man, I have a I listened to the Joe Rogan podcast, and one of the daughters, I guess, or the granddaughters of that guy who started that organization spoke on it. And, you know, they hate homosexuals, and they hate anything to do with it. If you support gay people, then you're going to hell. And that's one of the reasons they you know, they protested the deaths of soldiers, because the American government supports homosexuality. And it's like, my God, the whole organization just makes me so sick to my stomach. But at the same time, I guess it's a good thing that we live in a country where they're able to speak their mind if they want to be hated by millions of people.
Yes, I think it is. Here, I'm sorry, I hear some chaos from downstairs. My wife, I've got 2 children, and I can hear them both screaming. I feel I should probably go and help my wife before she screams at me. So do you think you've got enough to go on?
My friend, this has been a wonderful podcast. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No. Sorry, that was a bit freeform. I do apologize for that, but I hope that's okay.
No, I really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed my time with you.
Let's stay in touch. Will you send us a link to the podcast when it goes live, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm working on about 3 a week. I have your number 24, so maybe 7-8 weeks.
Blimey. Okay, well, I'll look forward to that. I'll look out for it.
But you'll be up on YouTube in the next few days, though.
Okay, great. Well, lovely. Thank you very much. It was good speaking to you. All right, cheers then. Bye-bye. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Jasper Hamill. Coming up on number 25, I have Alex C. McDonald. He's an author. He has done the impossible. He has written a science fiction serial. He's not even done yet. He's got a few more chapters left to develop. 10,000 views. It's amazing. I'm going to sit down and talk to him and see how he's done it. He's got a great personality. I have no doubt that probably plays into it. Soon. Guys, thanks a lot for listening. I really appreciate it. BrianYellow.com, that's my website. Check it out. Some fiction on there eventually, because everything can't be podcasting all the time. And always, I'm on Twitter at BRYAIELLO. Talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.